Hello everyone, how are you guys doing today? So as many of you know right now, they are throwing the book completely at Carmelo Anthony. He is getting indicted and convicted of first degree murder and has a high possibility of spending life in prison. Yes, life in prison. Now, initially, when the story came out of, him allegedly, deliberately stabbing Austin Metcalf in the chest, it was proven that he acted out of self-defense, and that Austin Metcalf was the one being the threatening aggressor. So initially they didn't throw the book at Carmelo Anthony. I believe he just spent a few days in jail and then put him on probation or some shit like that. But now they're just finding, the criminal justice system is just finding ways right now to get him locked up for life. They can't stand the fact that there's a black man. They can't stand the fact that a black person is getting let free and getting away with so-called murder. Okay, so-called murder. So we're witnessing a legal lynching right now, and there's a lot of people who side with Austin Metcalf. They're very happy about that, but they still don't know the full story of what really happened. Now, here's what I want to say. When you bring up race, okay, a lot of people get very sensitive, and a lot of people will gaslight you and tell you that life is not all about race. There's other more important stuff in the world to worry about than race, because race is such a very volatile topic that we should refrain from talking about. And yes, to an extent I do agree that there are other things in the world that we most focus on, but race is not one of the topics that we should completely avoid and become desensitized to. Okay, because the whole world is about race, whether you like it or not. Okay, whether you want to accept that fact or not. Yes, there never was such a construct called race in ancient times. The word race was something invented as far back as the fucking 1600s, but that's the world we live in right now. Okay, now speaking of getting indicted and convicted, there's an ongoing genocide happening in Palestine right now, okay, that is perpetrated and committed by Israel, the United States, and a lot of these Western countries. They're not getting indicted or convicted of that. All the colonial crimes that these European countries committed on the continent of Africa, they did not get convicted and indicted, not even posthumously, for the colonial crimes they committed in Africa. King Leopold, when he committed the genocide that he did in the fucking Congo, he didn't get convicted, locked up, or indicted for that shit. The Germans, when they colonized Namibia and parts of South Africa, okay, they committed a genocide known as the Herero-Namakwa genocide. They didn't get convicted, tried, indicted, locked up for all those colonial crimes and genocide that they did. And what they did at that time was not even considered a fucking crime. Let's see what else. Oh yes, when the Europeans took this land, okay, took this country from the Native Americans and caused lots of bloodshed and genocide None of them were held accountable for that. Okay. What America did in the Philippines during the Filipino-American War, okay, all the lives they cost, nobody got convicted, indicted, or locked up for that. The Hiroshima bombs, okay, when they bombed Hiroshima with nuclear weapons after what Japan did at the beginning of World War II, bombing Pearl Harbor, they killed innocent men, women, and children in Japan, okay? Nobody, okay? I'm talking about the white people. They didn't get held responsible for that shit. And all the bloodshed and, unalivings and genocides they've been causing in the Middle East, okay? None of them are getting held accountable for that shit, okay? When they unalived Gaddafi, Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, okay, African leaders who were only trying to do good for their people, they became unalived, okay, wrongly, unreasonably unalived, okay, by the CIA, the U.S. government, the FBI, and all other of these Western countries. None of them got held accountable and responsible and convicted for that, okay? The murderer of Akai Gurley back in 2018, okay, his murderer, Peter Liang, I think he spent, from what I read, he did spend some jail time, but he only served 5 years and did some community service, okay? Same with the murderer of Latasha Harlins, okay, the Korean woman who murdered her. She didn't get convicted or tried for that. She only served community service, okay? And I can go on and on and on. The murderer of George Floyd, okay, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's only spending 35 years in prison for wrongly unaliving George Floyd, okay? The murderers of Ahmaud Arbery, okay, 3 of them will spend life in prison. One of the murderers are only going to spend 43 years. But as for the rest of the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, you know how that shit goes. You know how that shit goes. They're gonna try to find the criminal justice system is gonna try to find something good about them and let them off early just because they are white, okay? Protection for the complexion. And then the fucking Holocaust, when that shit happened, they were prosecuting the Nazis left and right because a lot of members of the Nazi party, they were fleeing to other parts of the world, particularly South America, okay? They were heavily getting persecuted for that shit. And it's because, the victims of the Holocaust, okay, were white Jews, okay? So, when it comes to, injustice and, atrocities that happen towards white people, there's outrage about that. But, when it comes to other non-white groups of people, whenever they get unalived, okay, and genocided by so-called white people, okay, the whites who are solely responsible of unaliving them, okay, they do not get held responsible, okay? So please don't fucking tell me that, and don't let anyone gaslight you, okay? For those of you who are conscious and are aware, like me, of what's going on around the world racially, don't let anyone gaslight you, okay? And, get you to succumb to them and get you to keep your mouth shut just because you're making them feel uncomfortable, okay? This is the life we fucking live in, okay? This is the reality we live in. The world is all about race. Now, back to Carmelo Anthony. I really hope by God's grace that he does not end up spending life in prison, okay? Yeah, I just hope something comes along the way where, maybe just only spending a few years in prison, but I hope this case gets dropped and, they get over it.